You saved for this trip. You packed your bags, confirmed your reservation, drove to the port, and stood in that line with your documents in hand, and then a staff member looked at your paperwork and said the word no traveler ever wants to hear at a cruise terminal. Denied. It is happening more than ever right now, and it is not happening to careless people. It is happening to experienced cruisers who had no idea the rules had changed. There are 8 new policies catching passengers completely off guard at the terminal in 2024 and 2025, and any one of them can stop your vacation before it starts. One of them has already turned away passengers who were standing right at the gangway. If you have a cruise coming up in the next 6 months, you need to watch this entire video. And if you know someone who is planning their first cruise or heading back out after a few years away, do them a favor and send this to them right now. A single 2-minute conversation could save their entire trip. Number 1. Incomplete health or immigration forms can stop you at check-in. Most people assume the paperwork part of cruising ends when they book the ticket. They assume the cruise line handles the rest. That assumption is costing passengers their vacations. In 2024, cruise lines significantly tightened their pre-boarding health and immigration documentation requirements, and incomplete forms are now one of the most common reasons passengers are turned away at the terminal before they ever reach the ship. The process used to be forgiving. Staff would walk you through missing fields, let you fill things out at the counter, and wave you through with a smile. That era is over. Today, terminal staff are operating under stricter instructions, and if your health declaration or immigration form is incomplete when your documents are scanned, you are pulled aside. If the issue cannot be resolved before your boarding window closes, you do not board. A 61-year-old from Tampa arrived at the terminal with her husband for a Caribbean sailing. She had completed most of her digital health declaration, but had skipped 2 fields she assumed were optional: her emergency contacts country code and a single checkbox about recent travel history. She was flagged at the first check-in desk. Her husband boarded. She spent 40 minutes at a separate counter while an agent tried to help her resolve the issue through the cruise line's app. She made it on the ship with 11 minutes to spare, but her embarkation experience was rattled for the rest of the day. 2 other passengers in line behind her were not as lucky. Their forms had more gaps, and their boarding window had already closed by the time an agent could assist them. Here is what you do. Log into your cruise line's app or website at least 72 hours before departure and open every single required document. Do not skim. Read each field. Health declarations often include questions about specific symptoms in the previous 14 days, recent travel to flagged regions, vaccination status, and emergency contact information down to the phone country code. Immigration forms may ask for your planned first port address, your return travel details, and your passport issue date, not just expiration. Fill every field, save the confirmation screen, and screenshot it. Bring both digital and printed copies to the terminal. The magic phrase at check-in, if something is flagged, "I completed this form on this date and have a confirmation number, can we pull it up on your system before we proceed?" Number 2, showing up outside your assigned boarding window. Assigned boarding windows have existed for years, but until recently, they were treated more like suggestions than rules. Show up an hour early and you would usually just wait in a holding area. Show up late and staff would squeeze you in. That flexibility is essentially gone. Cruise lines are now enforcing boarding windows with a strictness that is catching experienced cruisers completely off guard, because the people most likely to ignore the assigned time are people who have cruised before and remember when it did not matter. Here is how it works now. When you complete your online check-in, you are assigned a specific arrival window, usually a 90-minute slot. That slot is tied to your booking in the system. If you arrive before your window opens, terminal staff may turn you away at the door and ask you to wait outside or in a separate holding area, sometimes in a parking structure or an outdoor queue with no seating. If you arrive after your window has closed, especially within the last hour before the ship departs, you may be denied boarding even if the ship is still at the dock. A 67-year-old couple from Phoenix had a 1 o'clock to 2:30 boarding window. They arrived at 11:15 because they were anxious and wanted to be early. A staff member at the terminal entrance turned them away and told them to return at 1. The husband had a knee replacement, and standing for nearly 2 hours in the heat before being allowed back in was, in his words, the worst start to a vacation he had ever had. A 72-year-old from Nashville arrived at 4:40 for a 5 o'clock sailing. His window had been 12:30 to 2. The gangway was still connected. The ship had not moved. He was denied boarding. The ship left without him. Here is your action plan. When you receive your boarding confirmation, write the window time in 3 places: your phone calendar with an alarm, a note in your wallet, and on the front page of your printed documents. Plan to arrive no more than 15 minutes before your window opens, not earlier. If a travel delay is threatening your window, call the cruise line's embarkation hotline immediately. Most lines have a protocol for documented delays, but you must call before your window closes, not after. Number 3, your booking name doesn't match your passport exactly. This one feels like it should be an easy fix. It is not. Name mismatches between your cruise booking and your passport are one of the fastest ways to get pulled out of the boarding line and sent to a separate resolution desk. And depending on how far the mismatch goes, you may not be able to board at all. The rule is not new, but enforcement has intensified sharply since 2023 as cruise lines have upgraded their document scanning systems. Old systems sometimes allowed a 1 or 2 character discrepancy to pass. New systems flag it automatically and require a human agent to override, and those agents are now operating under stricter guidance about when they can and cannot approve an override. The most common mismatches involve middle names. Many passengers book under their first and last name only, the way they might book a hotel or a flight. But if your passport reads James Robert Harrison and your booking says James Harrison, you now have a mismatch that requires manual resolution. Hyphenated names cause the same problem. A woman who legally goes by her full hyphenated last name but booked under just one half of it will be flagged. So will anyone whose passport name includes a suffix, junior, or the third? That was left off the booking. A 64-year-old from Atlanta had booked his cruise under the name he used for everything, William Brooks. His passport read William Thomas Brooks, Jr. A terminal agent pulled him aside. The resolution desk was able to approve him after 45 minutes, but he missed priority boarding and arrived on the ship after the muster drill had already begun. He received a written note in his cabin requiring him to attend a makeup safety briefing that evening. Here is what you do. Pull out your passport right now and compare every character of your name to your cruise booking confirmation. They must match exactly, including middle names if they appear on your passport, hyphens, suffixes, and spacing. If there is any discrepancy, call the cruise line to correct it at least 30 days before sailing. Most lines will make name corrections for free before the final payment date. After final payment, there may be a fee of up to $150, but that is still far less expensive than missing your ship. Do not wait until the terminal to discover this problem. We are halfway through these 8 rules and not a single one of them is obvious from the cruise line's website. If this video is already saving you stress, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this information before they get to a terminal and find out the hard way. Number 4. Mandatory online check-in was never completed. There is a difference between booking a cruise and checking in for a cruise, and that distinction is now the difference between boarding and being denied. Mandatory online check-in is no longer a courtesy step that saves you time at the terminal. It is a required step that must be completed within a specific window, typically between 90 days and 48 hours before sailing, and passengers who skip it or forget it are being turned away at the terminal even when they have a valid booking confirmation in hand. What online check-in requires varies by cruise line, but it typically includes uploading a passport photo, uploading a clear face photograph taken within the last 6 months, entering your full travel documentation details, selecting a boarding time window, agreeing to current health and conduct policies, and providing a credit card for your onboard account. Missing any one of these steps means your check-in is marked incomplete in the system, and when a terminal agent scans your booking at the door, the screen shows a flag before you say a single word. A 70-year-old from Charlotte had cruised the same line 4 times. She received the online check-in email, assumed it was the same process she had done before, and set it aside to complete later. She forgot. At the terminal, the agent told her the check-in was incomplete and that she could not proceed. The cruise line had added a new required step that year, a digital acknowledgement of updated health protocols, and without it, no boarding pass could be generated. She completed the step on her phone at the counter in about 8 minutes, but the delay meant she entered the terminal at the back of the wave, waited an additional 35 minutes, and missed the sail-away event she had been looking forward to. Here is what you do. Mark your calendar for the first day your cruise line allows online check-in. Usually the date is listed in your booking confirmation. Complete the entire process that same day. Do not leave any section partially done. When you finish, download your boarding pass and save it both in the cruise line app and as a screenshot in your phone's camera roll. Bring a printed backup. If your boarding pass has a QR code, test that it scans cleanly at home by opening it in bright light. A corrupted file at the terminal creates the same problem as no file at all. Number 5. New minimum age rules for infants on certain cruises. This rule catches grandparents more than anyone else. Families planning multi-generational cruise vacations, grandparents, adult children, and grandchildren all traveling together are showing up at terminals with infants who do not meet the cruise line's new minimum age requirements, and they are being denied boarding for the infant. In some cases, that denial cascades into the entire family turning around because the parents will not leave the baby behind. Minimum age rules for infants on cruises have always existed, but several major cruise lines raised their minimums in 2023 and 2024 for specific itinerary types. Transatlantic and transpacific crossings, longer voyages of 10 nights or more, and certain adventure itineraries now require infants to be at least 6 months old on sailing day, up from the previous standard of 2 months or 3 months on some lines. Some expedition-style ships have raised that minimum to 12 months. The rule exists because of medical limitations at sea for very young infants. But the problem is that the fine print is buried several pages deep in the terms and conditions, and family members who are not the primary booking contact almost never read it. A grandmother from Denver had planned a 10-night Alaska, sailing with her daughter, son-in-law, and their 4-month-old granddaughter. The baby was healthy, the family was prepared, and the trip had been booked 8 months in advance. At the terminal, the infant's age was checked against the sailing requirement, which had been updated to 6 months minimum for Alaskan itineraries of 9 nights or more. The family was denied boarding for the infant. The daughter and son-in-law left with the baby. The grandmother sailed alone. Here is your action plan. If any infant under 12 months will be traveling on your sailing, call the cruise line directly and ask a live agent to confirm the minimum age requirement for your specific itinerary, your specific ship, and your specific sailing date. Do not rely on the general FAQ page. Policies differ by route, ship, and sometimes by season. Get the confirmation in writing via email. If the requirement has changed since you booked and the infant no longer qualifies, contact the cruise line immediately about your cancellation and refund options. Most lines have provisions for this exact situation if it is their policy change that caused the conflict. Number 6. UK ETA and EU ETIAS travel authorizations are now required. American cruisers are getting blindsided by this one at an increasing rate, and it is entirely understandable because the requirement is new, it is not widely publicized by cruise lines, and it applies even when you are only stopping briefly at a port, not moving to Europe or the UK for an extended stay. The United Kingdom's electronic travel authorization, known as the ETA, became mandatory for American travelers beginning in January 2025. The European Union's ETIAS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System, is scheduled to follow. These are not visas. They do not require interviews or extensive documentation, but they are legally required authorizations that must be obtained in advance. And if you board a cruise that calls on a UK or EU port without them, you can be denied disembarkation at that port, or in stricter enforcement scenarios, denied boarding entirely when the ship checks travel documents before departure. The UK ETA costs £10, is applied for online, takes most people about 15 minutes to complete, and is typically approved within 3 days, though the government recommends applying at least 4 weeks before travel. It is tied to your passport electronically, so there is no stamp or physical document. But if your passport does not have the approval on file and you try to disembark in Southampton, Liverpool, or Edinburgh on a repositioning cruise, you will be stopped. The EU ETIAS, once active, will operate on a similar model for Schengen zone ports, including Barcelona, Lisbon, and Rome. A 66-year-old couple from Seattle were on a transatlantic cruise that originated in New York and ended in Southampton, England. They had not heard of the UK ETA requirement. When the ship docked in Southampton and passengers began disembarking, the couple was flagged by UK Border Force officers conducting document checks at the gangway. They were detained on board for several hours while their situation was assessed. They were ultimately allowed to disembark with a formal warning and a conditional entry approval, but they missed their planned first day in London, and their pre-booked private transfer to their hotel had long since departed. Here is what you do. Before booking any cruise that includes ports in the United Kingdom or European Union countries, go directly to the official UK government website or the official EU ETIAS website and apply for the relevant authorization with your exact passport information. Apply at least 4 to 6 weeks before sailing. Save the approval confirmation and bring it with you. If you are unsure which countries on your itinerary require authorization, call the cruise line and ask specifically which ports require pre-entry travel authorizations for American passport holders. This is a question they are now trained to answer. Number 7. Credit card chargebacks can get you banned from future cruises. This one surprises people the most because it sounds like something that should not be possible. You disputed a charge on your credit card. That is your legal right as a consumer. How could that get you banned from a cruise line? Here is the answer, and it is important to understand it clearly. When a passenger files a credit card chargeback against a cruise line, the cruise line does not just lose that disputed amount. They also incur a chargeback fee from the credit card processor, typically between $15 and $100 per dispute. They are also required to spend staff time responding to the dispute with documentation. Cruise lines track chargebacks internally, and if your account shows a pattern of chargebacks, or if you file a chargeback for an amount the cruise line believes was a legitimate charge that you agreed to in the terms, they can flag your booking profile. In the most serious cases, that flag results in a permanent ban from future sailings. This is not a theoretical policy. It is enforced, and the people most likely to be caught by it are passengers who did not know there was a better resolution path. A 68-year-old from Houston disputed 4 separate charges from a single cruise, 2 charges he believed were duplicates, and 2 that he said he had never authorized. He filed chargebacks for all 4 through his credit card company. The cruise line's fraud team reviewed his account and determined that 3 of the 4 charges were legitimate under his onboard account agreement. His booking profile was flagged. When he tried to book a follow-up sailing 6 months later, his reservation was canceled, and he received a letter stating that his business was no longer welcome with that cruise line. Here is your action plan. Before you ever file a credit card chargeback against a cruise line, exhaust every internal resolution option first. Go to guest services before the ship docks. Request a printed itemized statement and dispute charges in person before you disembark. If you discover issues after the cruise, call the cruise line's customer service line within 15 days of sailing and put your dispute in writing via email. Document everything, including the names of agents you speak with and the times of those calls. Only consider a chargeback as a last resort after the cruise line has refused to resolve a legitimate billing error, and consult your credit card company about whether the dispute qualifies before initiating it. Number 8. New visa and e-visa requirements for cruise ports. The final rule is the one with the widest reach because it applies to dozens of destinations and changes more frequently than any other policy on this list. Visa and e-visa requirements for cruise ports have shifted significantly in the last 2 years, and the patchwork of new requirements is catching American passengers who assume that a U.S. passport gets them into every port on their itinerary without additional paperwork. That assumption was never fully accurate, and it is even less accurate now. The key misunderstanding is that cruise ship passengers have historically operated under a different entry category than commercial flight arrivals, often called a transit or shore excursion entry. Many countries waived standard visa requirements for cruise passengers because of the brief nature of the visit, typically less than 12 hours, course. But a growing number of countries have changed that policy, requiring American cruise passengers to hold a valid visa or approved e-visa even for a single port call. This includes some destinations in Asia, South America, and emerging markets in Africa and the Pacific. Several countries have introduced e-visa systems specifically designed for cruise passengers, with fees ranging from $10 to $150 and processing times of 3 to 15 business days. A 71-year-old couple from Miami were on a South American cruise that included a port call in Recife, Brazil. Brazil had reinstituted visa requirements for American travelers in 2025 after a period of waiver. The couple had not applied for a Brazilian e-visa because their travel agent had used an outdated reference guide that still listed Brazil as visa-free for Americans. When the ship docked, Brazilian federal police conducted document checks at the gangway. The couple was denied disembarkation and remained on the ship for the full port day while other passengers explored the city. Here is what you do. For every port on your cruise itinerary, go directly to that country's official immigration or consular website and verify the current entry requirements for American passport holders arriving by sea. Do not rely solely on your travel agent, the cruise line's port guide, or a travel blog. These sources are not always current. Start this process at least 60 days before sailing. If an e-visa is required, apply for it immediately. Keep digital and printed copies of every visa and e-visa approval. Store them in a dedicated travel folder separate from your other documents so you can access them quickly at any gangway checkpoint. Those 8 rules represent the difference between a smooth boarding experience and a vacation that ends before it begins. The cruise industry is moving faster than most passengers realize right now, and the rules that applied 2 or 3 years ago are not the rules enforced today. If you want to stay ahead of every change that could affect your next sailing, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. There is a video right here about the documents you need to have ready before you ever leave your driveway for the port, and it covers 2 specific items that terminal agents are now checking that almost nobody talks about. Watch it next, and travel smarter than the rules.